My name is Heather Young, and I'm 23 years old. Last Christmas, my twin sister got a brand new Tesla gleaming in the driveway with a giant red bow. Me, I got a chipped piggy bank from a discount store with $13 inside. My dad grinned. That's our contribution to your future home. Heather. I stood there, my heart sinking as my sister squealed and snapped selfies with her car. That night, I packed my bags, walked out the door, and didn't look back. Then my phone buzzed a text from my mom. Don't forget to pay the rent. I froze. After everything I had sacrificed for them, the first thing they thought about was asking me to cover the bills. That was the moment I knew I had to close that chapter for good. What happened next went far beyond anything I could have imagined. Everything shifted so fast that even I could hardly believe it was real. If you want to know how that twist changed my life forever, hit that subscribe button and join me for the full. If you want to understand this story, we have to go back to when I had just turned 18, a time when my twin sister and I felt like we were at the very top of our lives. We'd both gotten into college, me for business, her for marketing. I could already picture myself in a dorm crunching numbers and planning a future. But that summer, our family's toy store in Memphis went under. Online stores like Amazon were selling everything cheaper, and our little shop couldn't compete. Overnight, we went from middle class to barely scraping by. Rent was late, groceries were sparse, and college tuition. Forget it. Mom and Dad called us into the living room one evening. Their eyes were tired, like they'd been up all night arguing. "We can only send one of you to college." Dad said, his voice heavy. Mom looked at my sister, then at me. "Heather, you're the responsible one. You can work, help us keep the house. Your sister needs this chance to shine." My stomach dropped. Responsible. That's what they thought of me, the one who could just give up her dreams. I looked at my sister, her face lit up with hope, and I couldn't take that away. So I nodded. "Fine. I'll stay." I gave up college before I even unpacked my bags. Instead, I took a job as a financial data entry clerk at a small shipping company downtown. It wasn't glamorous, typing invoices, logging payments, staring at spreadsheets until my eyes burned. The pay was barely enough, but I used it to cover our bills: electricity, water, internet. I'd drag myself home after 10-hour shifts, only to hear Mom raving about my sister's new campus life, or Dad boasting about her perfect grades. It hurt, but I told myself I was doing the right thing. Family came first, right? Things got tougher the next year. The debts from the store kept growing: bank loans, credit cards, unpaid vendors. Dad's voice shook when he said we might lose the house. So I started funneling more of my paycheck to them. $100 for the mortgage, $50 for the utilities. Soon, I was giving them almost everything I earned. I stopped going out, didn't buy new clothes, didn't even think about saving for myself. My life was work bills and keeping us afloat. My sister, though, she was living it up. New outfits, weekend trips with friends, fancy lattes. She posted it all on social media. I'd see her photos late at night, a tight knot forming in my chest. Mom would say, "She's making us proud, Heather. You're helping her get there." Helping her. What about my dreams? But I bit my tongue and kept going. That's when I met Daniel, my boyfriend. He worked at a coffee shop near my office, always sneaking me a free drink when I looked like I was about to collapse. We'd chat during my breaks, and he'd listen when I poured out my frustrations about home. He had this way of making me feel seen, like I wasn't just a machine paying the family's bills. He was studying interior design, always sketching ideas on napkins, and his passion gave me a spark of hope. By the time I was 21, I'd paid off most of the family's debts. I'd worked hard, taken online courses for bookkeeping, and gotten promoted to financial assistant at the company. The extra money helped, and I thought things might turn around. Maybe Mom and Dad would see what I'd sacrificed. Maybe they'd thank me. Maybe they'd even help me go back to school. But deep down, I knew it was a long shot. They never asked how I was holding up, never noticed the bags under my eyes. To them, I was just the one who fixed things, the one who didn't need anything. Looking back, I was naive. I gave up my future for a family that took it for granted. I thought I was being strong, but I was setting myself up for the betrayal that was coming. A couple of years after I started working, things began to look up, at least for me. I'd thrown myself into my job at the shipping company, learning every trick of the trade. I took online courses in bookkeeping on the side, staying up late to study after long shifts. My hard work paid off when I got promoted to financial assistant by my early 20s. The raise wasn't huge, but it felt like a lifeline. I was proud, thinking maybe now my family would see what I was capable of. With the extra money, I did more than just cover bills. I started investing small amounts in a local business, a friend's startup that was doing well. It wasn't much at first, a few $100s here and there, but it grew. By the time I was 22, I'd made enough to help Mom and Dad clear the last of their debts from the toy store. I handed over thousands of dollars to pay off their final loan, thinking it would save our family home. I'd lie awake at night imagining them sitting me down saying, "Heather, we couldn't have done this without you." But that never happened. Instead, Mom and Dad acted like it was no big deal. "Thanks, Heather," Mom would say, barely looking up from her phone. Dad would nod, then go back to talking about my sister's latest achievements. Lindsay was still in college, living her best life. She'd come home for breaks with new clothes, a shiny new phone, even a fancy laptop, all paid for by Mom and Dad. I'd see her posts online showing off designer bags or trips to Miami with her friends. Each photo was like a punch to the gut. I was the one keeping the lights on, but she was the one they bragged about. I tried to brush it off. I told myself it was fine that I was doing this for all of us. But the unfairness started to eat at me. One evening, I was at the kitchen table going over our family's budget to make sure we wouldn't miss another payment. Mom walked in, saw me with my spreadsheets, and said, "Oh, Heather, you're so good at this stuff. Can you send Lindsay some extra cash? She needs it for a new outfit for her internship interview." I stared at her, waiting for a please, or even a thank you for everything I'd done. Nothing. Just a smile, like it was my job to keep funding Lindsay's life. Dad was no better. He'd come home from his new job at a hardware store and talk endlessly about Lindsay's marketing projects, or how she was destined for greatness. Once I tried to share my own news, I'd gotten a bonus at work for catching a major error in the company's accounts. I thought maybe he'd be proud, but he just said, "That's nice, Heather. Did you hear Lindsay got picked for a study abroad program?" My heart sank. It was like I was invisible unless they needed money. Daniel, my boyfriend, saw it all. We'd been together for a while by then, and he'd become my rock. He was still working at the coffee shop, but had started taking on freelance interior design projects, sketching beautiful spaces that made me dream of something bigger. One night, over cheap takeout at his apartment, I vented about how my family treated me. "Heather," he said, his eyes serious, "you're killing yourself for them, and they don't even see it. You deserve better." His words hit hard, but I wasn't ready to admit he was right. I still believed things could change. I started hoping the holidays would be different. Christmas was coming up, and I thought maybe Mom and Dad would show some gratitude. I'd given up my education, my social life, everything to pull our family out of debt. I'd even started putting money into a joint account with them, thinking we could rebuild together. Surely they'd see that. Surely they'd do something to make me feel valued. I wasn't asking for much, just a sign that I mattered as much as Lindsay did. But deep down, a part of me knew I was hoping for too much. Every time I walked into the house, I felt like the help, not their daughter. Mom would ask for money for emergencies that always seemed to involve Lindsay's wants. Dad would pat my shoulder and say, "You're our rock, Heather," but it felt hollow. I'd go to bed exhausted, wondering if this was all my life would ever be, working, giving, and getting nothing back. That Christmas, I walked into our Memphis home with a flicker of hope. The house was decked out, twinkling lights, a towering tree, the smell of Mom's cinnamon rolls filling the air. For once, I thought maybe my family would show they appreciated me. I'd spent years keeping us afloat, pulling us out of debt, and I wasn't asking for much, just a sign that I mattered. But what happened that day shattered any illusions I had left. The living room was packed with relatives, everyone buzzing with holiday cheer. Lindsay was the center of attention as usual, laughing and showing off her new phone. I sat quietly sipping hot cocoa waiting for the gift exchange. Mom and Dad always made a big show of it, handing out presents with dramatic flair. I watched as Lindsay tore into her first gift, a designer purse from Mom. She squealed, hugging Mom like she'd just won the lottery. "You guys are the best," she gushed. I forced a smile, telling myself it was fine. My turn would come. Then Dad called Lindsay outside, a mischievous grin on his face. "We've got something special for you," he said. Everyone followed, crowding onto the porch. There in the driveway was a sleek silver Tesla wrapped in a giant red bow. The crowd erupted in cheers. Lindsay screamed, jumping up and down, already pulling out her phone to snap selfies with the car. "Oh my gosh, a Tesla! You guys are insane!" she shouted, climbing into the driver's seat. Mom beamed, saying, "You deserve it, honey. You're our star." Dad nodded, clapping her on the back like she'd just graduated with honors. I stood frozen on the porch, my heart pounding in my ears. A Tesla, that car cost more than my entire year's salary. I'd been pouring every dime into our family, and they'd spent a fortune on Lindsay. My hands shook as I gripped my mug, trying to keep it together. Then Mom turned to me, holding out a small, poorly wrapped box. "Here, Heather," she said, her voice casual like an afterthought. I opened it. My fingers numb. Inside was a chipped ceramic piggy bank, the kind you'd find at a dollar store, with 13 crumpled dollar bills stuffed inside. The room went quiet, a few cousins exchanging awkward glances. Dad chuckled, breaking the silence. "That's our contribution to your future home, Heather. Gotta start somewhere, right?" His words hit like a slap. Contribution. I'd paid off their debts, kept the house running, and this was my reward. A cheap trinket and a mocking joke. Lindsay didn't even look up from her phone, too busy posting about her Tesla. I forced a tight smile, muttering thanks, but inside I was crumbling. Later that evening, after the guests left, I sat alone in the kitchen staring at the piggy bank. Something didn't add up. How could Mom and Dad afford a Tesla? Dad's job at the hardware store barely covered groceries, and Mom wasn't working. My mind raced, and a sick feeling settled in my stomach. I grabbed my laptop and logged into the joint account I'd set up with them, the one I'd been putting my investment earnings into, thinking we were rebuilding together. My breath caught as I scrolled through the transactions. A massive withdrawal, nearly $30,000, had been made a week ago, transferred to a car dealership. They'd used my money, my hard-earned savings, to buy Lindsay's Tesla. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. All those years of sacrifice, giving up college, working myself to the bone, they'd taken my money without even asking. I thought back to every time Mom asked for emergency funds, every time Dad called me their rock. It was all a lie. They didn't see me as their daughter. They saw me as a bank account. Lindsay's voice echoed from the living room, laughing about her new car, and it took everything in me not to storm in there and scream. I called Daniel, my hands trembling as I told him what I'd found. "They used my money, Daniel," I choked out. "Everything I worked for, they gave it to her." His voice was steady, calming me down. "Heather, you don't deserve this. You need to confront them." I knew he was right, but the thought of facing Mom and Dad made my stomach churn. I'd spent so long trying to hold our family together, but now I saw the truth: they'd never valued me. That night, I lay awake, the piggy bank sitting on my nightstand like a cruel reminder. My hope for a fair Christmas had been naive. I wasn't just hurt, I was done. Done being their ATM, done pretending everything was okay. I didn't know how I'd do it, but I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't stay in that house anymore. Something had to change, and it was going to start with me. A week after Christmas, I couldn't shake the betrayal. Finding out Mom and Dad had taken $30,000 of my savings to buy Lindsay a Tesla left me raw, like someone had ripped my heart out. I'd been living in their house, pouring every dime into keeping us afloat, and they'd used me like a bank. Daniel kept pushing me to stand up for myself, and I knew he was right. I couldn't keep swallowing their lies. When Mom announced a family dinner to ring in the new year, I decided it was time. I wasn't just going to confront them, I was going to make sure everyone saw who they really were. That night, our Memphis home was alive with relatives. The dining room was crowded plates piled with fried chicken and mashed potatoes, voices overlapping in cheerful chaos. Lindsay held court in the corner, bragging about her Tesla, her phone lighting up with likes on her latest posts. I moved through the room like a ghost, setting out napkins, my hands trembling with what I was about to do. Every time Mom smiled at me or Dad said, "Thanks, Heather," it felt like a knife twisting deeper. We sat down to eat, and I waited, my pulse hammering in my ears. The conversation flowed, cousins joking aunts, swapping gossip until there was a pause. I pushed my chair back, the screech, cutting through the noise. Everyone turned to me, forks hovering. My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "I need to talk," I said, my voice louder than I expected. For years, I've given up everything for this family. I skipped college so Lindsay could go. I worked myself ragged to pay off your debts, Mom, Dad. I put my savings into our joint account thinking we were in this together. But you stole $30,000 of my money to buy Lindsay a Tesla. I gestured toward the driveway where her car gleamed under the streetlight. The room went still, like the air had been sucked out. Mom's face flushed, her eyes darting to the relatives. "Heather, stop this nonsense." She snapped, her voice sharp. Dad coughed, staring at his plate. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," he mumbled. Lindsay scoffed, crossing her arms. "Seriously, Heather, you're so dramatic." "Get over yourself," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. I laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "Dramatic? Carol, Robert, you've treated me like a cash machine for years. I paid your bills, your loans, and you gave me a chipped piggy bank as a joke. Lindsay, you got a free ride to college and a Tesla, all with my money. And you act like I owe you." I held up the bank statement. I'd printed the proof, glaring in black and white. $30,000 gone to a car dealership. You didn't even ask. Gasps rippled through the table. My uncle leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Carol, is this true?" he asked. Mom stammered, her hands shaking. It's family money." "We thought it was okay." Dad raised his voice. His face red. "Heather, you're blowing this out of proportion. Lindsay earned that car with her hard work." "Her hard work?" I shouted, my voice breaking. "I gave up my dreams for you. I lived here, worked myself to death, and you stole from me. I'm done. Done paying your bills. Done cleaning up your messes. As of tonight, I'm out." I turned to Lindsay, her glare burning into me. "And you're on your own. Good luck with that Tesla without my cash." The room erupted. Mom burst into tears, clutching her napkin. "Heather, how could you humiliate us?" she sobbed. Dad stood, pointing at me. "You're ungrateful after everything we've done?" Lindsay shoved her chair back and stormed out the front door, slamming behind her. Relatives whispered, some looking shocked, others uncomfortable. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing. I marched to my room in their house where I'd spent years sacrificing, and started packing. I threw clothes, my laptop, a few photos into a suitcase, my hands moving on autopilot. Mom followed, her voice desperate. "Heather, please, we're family. Don't do this," she begged. I zipped my bag and faced her. "Carol, you stopped being my family when you chose Lindsay over me. I'm done." I pushed past her, ignoring her sobs. Dad was at the bottom of the stairs, his arms crossed. "If you leave, don't think you can come back," he said coldly. I met his eyes. "Robert, I won't need to. I'm done carrying you." I walked out the front door, the cold January air hitting my face, my heart pounding but steady. I drove to Daniel's apartment, my suitcase in the back seat. He was waiting, pulling me into a tight hug the moment I stepped inside. "You were so brave," he whispered. I sank into him, tears finally spilling over. "I don't know what's next," I admitted. He smiled, brushing my hair back. "We'll figure it out together." That night, I slept on his couch, exhausted but free. The next day, I logged into the joint account one last time. I transferred my remaining savings to my personal account, then closed the joint one for good. I blocked Mom, Dad, and Lindsay's numbers, cutting off their endless demands. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally my own person, ready to start over. In the weeks that followed my walkout, I felt like I was breathing for the first time in years. Living with Daniel in his small Memphis apartment was a fresh start, a chance to figure out who I was without the weight of my family's demands. His place wasn't fancy mismatched furniture, a leaky faucet, but it felt like home. For the first time, I wasn't waking up to Carol's requests for money or Robert's dismissive comments. I was free, but freedom came with its own challenges. I had my savings, but starting over wasn't easy. Daniel was my anchor. He'd been freelancing as an interior designer, sketching stunning layouts for local businesses, and his passion was contagious. One night over pizza on his worn-out couch, he handed me a sketch pad. "You've got an eye for detail, Heather," he said. "Why not try designing with me? You could be great at it." I laughed, brushing it off. I'd spent years crunching numbers, not creating. But he insisted, showing me the basics: color palettes, furniture, layouts, mood boards. I was hooked. For the first time since giving up college, I felt like I was learning something for me. I dove into interior design, spending evenings studying online tutorials and practicing sketches. Daniel was patient, critiquing my work with gentle honesty, pushing me to improve. To pay my share of the rent, I took a part-time job as a barista at a coffee shop near his apartment. The work was grueling, long shifts, rude customers, but it kept me independent. I refused to touch my savings unless I had to. I wanted to build this new life on my own terms, not on the scraps of what I'd given to Carol and Robert. By spring, I was getting the hang of design. Daniel landed a small project redecorating a local bookstore, and he brought me on as his assistant. We spent weekends picking out rugs, rearranging shelves, and painting walls. The owner loved our work, and I felt a spark of pride I hadn't known in years. That project led to another, a cafe needing a cozy vibe. I designed a corner nook with plush chairs and warm lighting, and when customers raved about it, Daniel grinned at me. "Told you you're a natural," he said. Those small wins gave me hope that I could make this work. But starting over wasn't all smooth sailing. I struggled with doubt, wondering if I'd made a mistake leaving my stable finance job. Money was tight, and I had to budget every dollar. Some nights I'd lie awake worrying I'd fail at design and end up with nothing. Daniel was always there, reminding me why I'd left. "You're not their ATM anymore," he'd say, squeezing my hand. "You're building something real." His belief in me kept me going. Meanwhile, I heard bits and pieces about my family through mutual friends. Without my financial support, Carol and Robert were struggling. Robert's job at the hardware store wasn't enough to cover their bills, and Carol had started picking up shifts at a grocery store. Lindsay, it turned out, couldn't keep up with the Tesla payments. She'd racked up debt trying to maintain her flashy lifestyle, and the car was repossessed a few months after I left. I felt a twinge of guilt when I heard that, but it passed quickly. They'd made their choices just like I'd made mine. Lindsay tried reaching out once, leaving a voicemail I didn't return. "Heather, we need to talk," she said, her voice clipped. I deleted it. I'd spent years giving her everything, and she'd thrown it back in my face. Carol and Robert sent a few texts too, asking me to come home or work things out. I blocked their numbers again. I wasn't going back to that house, to their lies and demands. Daniel supported me, saying I didn't owe them anything. "Focus on you," he'd tell me, and I did. As the months passed, I grew more confident. I started pitching my own design ideas to clients, landing a contract to refresh a small office space. It wasn't big, but it was mine. I spent hours perfecting the layout, choosing sleek desks and vibrant accent walls. When the client shook my hand and said, "This is exactly what we needed," I nearly cried. It was proof I could do this, proof I was more than the girl who'd given up everything for her family. Living with Daniel deepened our bond. We'd stay up late dreaming about opening our own design studio one day. He'd sketch wild ideas, and I'd rein them in with practical plans. We balanced each other, and I realized how lucky I was to have him. He wasn't just my boyfriend, he was my partner, my biggest cheerleader. For the first time, I let myself imagine a future that wasn't about sacrifice, a future where I could be happy. By the end of that first year on my own, I wasn't the same Heather who'd walked out of Carol and Robert's house. I was stronger, more sure of myself. I still had a long way to go, but I was building a life I was proud of. My family's struggles were their own now, and I refused to carry their weight anymore. I was ready for whatever came next, knowing I had Daniel by my side and a dream worth chasing. A year after I walked out of Carol and Robert's house, my life was unrecognizable. Living with Daniel in Memphis had given me the space to rebuild, to chase a future I'd never dared to dream of before. But one piece of unfinished business lingered: the $30,000 they'd taken from our joint account to buy Lindsay's Tesla. I couldn't let it go. That money was mine, earned through years of sacrifice, and I deserved justice. So I decided to take Carol and Robert to court. I hired a lawyer, a sharp woman who listened to my story and didn't sugarcoat things. "It's a strong case," she told me, flipping through my bank statements. "The joint account was in your name, and you have proof of their withdrawal. We can argue financial misconduct." The process wasn't easy, gathering evidence, filing paperwork, sitting through tense meetings, but Daniel was by my side, keeping me grounded. He'd hold my hand during late-night prep sessions, reminding me I was fighting for what was right. The court date came that spring. Standing in the Memphis courthouse, I faced Carol and Robert across the room. They looked smaller than I remembered, their faces tight with worry. Lindsay wasn't there. She'd moved to Nashville, chasing some marketing job I'd heard. My lawyer laid out the facts: the joint account, my contributions, their unauthorized withdrawal for the Tesla. Carol tried to argue it was family money, but the bank records didn't lie. Robert stayed silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. The judge didn't take long to decide. She ruled in my favor, ordering Carol and Robert to repay the full $30,000 plus legal fees. When the gavel came down, I felt a rush of relief. It wasn't just about the money, it was about holding them accountable. They'd taken so much from me, but I'd taken something back. The repayment came in installments, slow at first because Carol and Robert were struggling. Without my support, their finances had crumbled. Robert was still at the hardware store, barely making ends meet, and Carol's grocery store job wasn't enough. I heard through a cousin that Lindsay's Tesla was long gone, repossessed, when she couldn't keep up with the payments. Part of me felt a pang of sadness for their mess, but I'd learned my lesson: their problems weren't mine anymore. With the lawsuit behind me, I threw myself into my new life. My interior design work was taking off. After those first small projects with Daniel, the bookstore, the cafe, I landed a bigger contract redesigning a local boutique hotel. I poured my heart into it, choosing soft linens, warm wood tones, and elegant lighting that made the space feel alive. When the hotel owner praised my work at the grand opening, I stood taller, feeling like I'd finally found my place. Daniel and I started talking about launching our own design studio, a dream that felt closer every day. That summer, Daniel proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture, just the two of us on his apartment balcony, the Memphis skyline glowing in the distance. He pulled out a simple silver ring, his hand shaking a little. "Heather, you're my everything," he said. "Let's build our future together." I said yes before he could finish, tears streaming down my face. We planned a small wedding, just close friends and a few of Daniel's relatives. I didn't invite Carol, Robert, or Lindsay. They weren't part of my life anymore, and I was okay with that. The wedding was perfect, a sunny afternoon in a local garden with wildflowers and fairy lights. I wore a simple white dress, and Daniel looked at me like I was the only person in the world. As we exchanged vows, I promised to love him, to trust him, and to never let anyone take advantage of me again. When we kissed, our friends cheered, and I felt a joy I'd never known. For the first time, I wasn't defined by what I'd given up, but by what I'd built. Now looking back, I see how far I've come. Carol and Robert are still in Memphis scraping by, but I don't keep tabs on them. Lindsay's out there somewhere chasing her dreams, and I wish her well from a distance. I'm not the girl who gave up college to save her family anymore. I'm a designer, a wife, a woman who fought for her worth, and won. My life with Daniel isn't perfect, bills pile up, clients can be tough, but it's ours, built on love and respect. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this family isn't about who you're born to, it's about who stands by you. I spent years trying to earn Carol and Robert's love, thinking sacrifice would make me enough, but I was enough all along. Walking away was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it gave me the freedom to find myself. To anyone out there feeling trapped, giving everything and getting nothing back, I want you to know you deserve better. Fight for it. You're worth it.